At the company's annual party, Xia Xian drank too much. She had a low tolerance for alcohol and bad drinking habits. She didn't go crazy or anything. She just liked to hold on to people and analyze her feelings. She vaguely remembered that last night, the person she wouldn't let go of was the CEO, Yu Xinping. She couldn't recall what she said, only that she ended up throwing up all over him. That Italian handmade suit was completely ruined, and perhaps a few drops even splashed onto his shoes. Oh, the scene was too beautiful to remember. Yu Xinping had a slight cleanliness obsession. As his secretary, Xia Xian knew this very well. He always instructed her to wipe the documents delivered by subordinates with a tissue before handing them to him. He had a dedicated cup for drinking and special utensils for eating. Every time she accompanied him to a business dinner, while everyone else was exchanging pleasantries, she would foolishly take out his special utensils from her bag and set them up, looking exactly like his nanny. He didn't like others touching him, saying it made him uncomfortable. Once, she saw a hot-bodied woman deliberately fall in front of him. Not only did he not help her, but he also jumped 3 feet away in disgust. She still remembered the look on that woman's face. But when they handed over documents and her fingers occasionally touched his, he didn't have such a big reaction. Maybe he was more accepting of people he was familiar with. However familiar, hugging his arm all night and throwing up all over him was something even he couldn't tolerate, right? Xia Xian groaned, her head aching even more. Fortunately, today was the start of the holiday break. Immersed in the festive New Year's atmosphere, maybe Yu Xinping would forget the stain she accidentally left behind? Reality soon proved she was overly optimistic. Are you sober yet? Yu Xinping's voice on the phone wasn't as angry as she had imagined. Instead, it was gentler than usual, with a tone she had never heard before, intimate and teasing. She couldn't figure it out for a moment, holding the phone without knowing what to say. Slivers of sunlight shone through the gaps in the yellow curtains, dappling her fingers, and the silver ring sparkled brilliantly. Startled, she dropped the phone. It was Yu Xinping's ring, not something valuable, but of great significance. It was said to be left by his grandfather, and he always wore it on his right index finger. Why was it now on her hand, on her ring finger? Had she not only thrown up on the CEO last night, but also stolen his ring? Trembling, she picked up the phone. Yu Xinping said, "I'm downstairs at your place." Startled again, she dropped the phone, breaking it completely. It went black. She didn't even bother to put on shoes, rushing to the window and cautiously lifting a corner of the curtain. Sure enough, Yu Xinping's black Bentley was parked downstairs. She was doomed. The CEO had come to settle accounts. Assessing the situation, she realized a frontal confrontation would be disadvantageous, so she needed to employ a delay tactic. Maybe, with time, the CEO's anger would dissipate. She quickly packed her bags and sneaked out from the other side of the complex. Even on the plane, she was still on edge, fearing Yu Xinping might appear from some corner at any moment. The flight to her hometown took just 40 minutes. Her grandmother picked her up at the airport, delighted. "Weren't you coming back in a few days? I missed you and Dad. You sweet-talking girl, always so charming." But her mouth tasted bitter. Yu Xinping had a total of 7 secretaries, and she was the least experienced, yet the most relied upon by the CEO. Earlier, Yu Xinping had announced that next year, one of them would be promoted to senior secretary, with double the salary, an apartment, and a car. Her colleagues were all optimistic about her, but now, her future had been completely ruined by her own vomit. She thought, perhaps she should sincerely apologize to Yu Xinping. After all, this incident had nothing to do with her work. But Yu Xinping was not the type to separate personal and professional matters. When Xia Xian first applied for the secretary position, the competition was fierce. Over 100 flamboyant women applied. Some were well-endowed but brainless. Others had high education and quality, and there were even wealthy daughters among them. The position of the CEO's secretary was indeed highly coveted, but Yu Xinping himself was even more attractive to the women, handsome, wealthy, noble, and elegant. Most of them were there to apply for the position of Mrs. CEO. Xia Xian had abilities but wasn't the most capable. She had education but not the highest degree. She had experience but not the richest. She had a good figure but not the hottest. She wasn't bad-looking but not the most beautiful. Overall, she was neither outstanding nor exceptional, a moderate talent. Yu Xinping chose her for a very peculiar reason. In the special skills section, she wrote that she could perform magic tricks. He was very interested and asked her to perform on the spot. Unprepared, she performed the simplest trick of cutting a rope and then magically rejoining it. Then he said, "Welcome to be my 7th secretary." She never dreamed that a magic trick she randomly learned online would pave the way for her to enter a Fortune 500 company. Thinking of how Yu Xinping hired her because of this irrelevant skill made her feel very insecure. Although she wouldn't be fired, it was very likely she would be demoted, marginalized, or given a hard time. She hadn't slept well for several nights, seeing Yu Xinping's angry face every time she closed her eyes. Her grandmother endured for a few days and then asked her, "Are you secretly in love with your boss? I keep hearing you call out CEO in your sleep." She spat out a mouthful of water. "Mom, you're overthinking. I'm just too dedicated to my job, dreaming about work." Her grandmother scrutinized her with a sharp gaze, making Xia Xian feel guilty. She straightened her back, pretended to be nonchalant, and poured herself another glass of water to sip slowly. Suddenly, the house phone rang. Her grandmother answered and, after a few hellos, called out, "Sweetie, it's for you, your CEO." Xia Xian spat out her water again. Yu Xinping was indeed omnipotent, finding her hometown phone number. It seemed she had really angered him this time. She took the phone and, while her grandmother wasn't paying attention, pressed the hang-up button, then pretended to speak into the receiver. "CEO, yes, don't worry, I will prepare that document. Okay, goodbye and Happy New Year." To prevent the CEO from calling again, she didn't hang up the phone properly. Her grandmother said, "Your boss really exploits his employees. It's New Year's, and he still won't let you rest." Xia Xian agreed. Yes, while her left eyelid twitched nonstop. Avoiding the issue was not a solution. The holiday break would end eventually. While others gained weight during the new year, Xia Xian had lost a significant amount. On her first day back at the company, as soon as she entered the building, she heard Fang Ziyu's exaggerated voice. "Xiao Xian, I missed you so much. A day without you feels like 3 years." Fang Ziyu rushed over to give her a big hug, frowning slightly at how thin she felt. "How did you lose so much weight? Don't torture yourself just for the CEO." Xia Xian glanced out of the corner of her eye and saw Yu Xinping walking towards the elevator. She couldn't even process Fang Ziyu's words of "for the CEO" instead of "because of the CEO" before her legs trembled and she bolted for the stairs, quickly climbing up. Fang Ziyu followed behind, panting, "I get it," avoiding suspicion. "By the way, it was really brave of you to confess to the CEO at the annual party." Xia Xian's foot slipped, and she tumbled down the stairs, feeling a sharp pain in her left ankle. Before she could cry out, Fang Ziyu's shrill scream echoed, successfully drawing everyone's attention in the lobby. Even without turning around, Xia Xian could feel a piercing gaze behind her, like an arrow aimed straight at her back. She thought, not only had she sullied the CEO's body, but she had also toyed with his soul. Struggling to get up, Yu Xinping had already stepped in front of her. His face was as dark as a blackboard, lips pressed into a thin line, staring at her sternly, extending his hand. "CEO, please don't hit me. I'm sorry. I was drunk at the annual party and talking nonsense. Please don't take it to heart." Yu Xinping's hand hovered in midair, his fair, slender fingers trembling slightly before clenching into a fist, knuckles turning white. Xia Xian swallowed hard and continued to apologize. "Really, whenever I get drunk, I end up confessing to someone. Once, I even confessed to my dog." Yu Xinping's face turned as black as ink, and the atmosphere in the lobby became eerily tense. "No, I didn't mean to compare you to a dog, CEO. I was just giving an example." Yu Xinping slowly withdrew his hand, and just when Xia Xian thought he was going to leave, he suddenly bent down, picked her up, and instructed his assistant to the hospital. His arms were strong and firm, like steel bands around her waist, rendering her immobile. She caught a whiff of his faint lemon scent, mixed with a hint of rosewood, a pleasant aroma from Versace's men's perfume, the Dreamer. Typically, Yu Xinping wouldn't involve his secretaries in his personal life. But once, when he was rushing to catch a flight and forgot his cologne, he instructed Xia Xian to pick one up from a nearby mall. Xia Xian knew nothing about men's cologne and chose the Dreamer purely because it was expensive and had luxurious packaging. Yu Xinping liked it a lot and had been using it ever since. Looking up, Xia Xian saw his stubbled chin and well-defined jawline, and she thought, wasn't the CEO averse to physical contact? Could it be that after she threw up on him, he had given up and decided to let it go? It was just a sprain, nothing serious. The doctor prescribed some medication and advised Xia Xian to rest and minimize activity. Yu Xinping said, since it's a minor injury, there's no need to take sick leave. See, the retaliation had begun. Xia Xian dared not disagree, putting on a spirited facade. Yes, sir. However, her work wasn't really hindered. Her colleagues knew about her injury and took over tasks that required walking. Yu Xinping, on the other hand, seemed to deliberately make things difficult for her. The internal line rang. Xia Xian, I have a proposal here. I need you to deliver it to Manager Shen at KD. The document is crucial, and I can't trust anyone else with it. You must do it personally. The emphasis on personally made her ankle throb with pain. The blinds in the CEO's office were half closed. Through the gaps, she could see Yu Xinping reclining in his chair, seemingly resting. As she limped over to get the document, she heard his steady, even breathing, indicating he was asleep. When tired, he could fall asleep quickly. Once, on a flight back from France, he was asleep by the time she finished turning off her phone. Don't expect a handsome man to have a graceful sleeping posture. Men who look good even when sleeping only exist in novels. When Yu Xinping slept, he habitually crossed his arms over his chest, his mouth slightly open, looking a bit silly. Xia Xian quietly placed his ring back on his desk, hoping that his joy at finding the lost ring would make him overlook why it went missing and how it reappeared. She took a cab to KD Group and handed the document to Manager Shen. Noticing her limp, Shen asked, "What happened to your leg, Miss Xia?" "I twisted it on the way here. Let me arrange for someone to take you back." She smiled. "Thank you, but it's just a minor injury, nothing serious." Leaving the manager's office, she immediately regretted it. The elevator was fine when she arrived, but now a sign next to it read, "Under maintenance." She nearly burst into tears. It was 12 floors down. She hobbled down step by step, thinking her injured foot would be ruined. She debated whether to wait for the elevator to be fixed or shamelessly ask Manager Shen to have 2 people carry her down. In her painful dilemma, someone came up the stairs. His suit jacket was draped over his arm, and his tie was askew. Panting, he walked over to Xia Xian. "CEO, what are you doing here?" Xia Xian smelled his strong masculine scent, as if the air was filled with Yu Xinping's fragrance, seeping into her skin and bones. It took Yu Xinping a while to catch his breath before saying, "I forgot you were injured with all the work I had." Xia Xian was stunned and took a moment to realize he was subtly apologizing. "You didn't remind me either," Yu Xinping said, with a hint of reproach. "If your injury worsens, it'll be troublesome." Somehow, it became her fault. Feeling wronged, Xia Xian replied sarcastically, "How could I refuse the CEO's orders? Even if you asked me to run a marathon in this condition, I would obey." Yu Xinping gave her a meaningful look before bending down. "Get on, I'll carry you down." "It's 12 floors, CEO," Xia Xian reminded him kindly. "Get on," Yu Xinping repeated, his tone brooking no argument. Xia Xian climbed onto his back, hooking her arms around his neck. Just as he lifted her, the elevator suddenly opened and a maintenance worker emerged, removing the "under maintenance" sign. Xia Xian didn't know whether to feel disappointed or relieved. She whispered, "The elevator is fixed. You can put me down now." Yu Xinping didn't let go, carrying her into the elevator. His back was broad and warm. Lowering her head, she could see a coin-sized red birthmark on the back of his neck, like a little star. When My Love from the Star was popular, Xia Xian jokingly called him a man truly from the stars with her colleagues. Her colleagues were shocked. How do you know the CEO has a star-shaped birthmark on his neck? Their gazes turned suspicious, as if she and the CEO had some unspeakable relationship. She quickly explained, "It's just a little below his neck. If you look carefully, you'll see it." While most women focused on Yu Xinping's face and his wealth, only Xia Xian noticed his emotions, likes, habits, and everything about him. She knew his clothing and shoe sizes, what brand of toothpaste he used, that he liked drinking flower tea and rarely had coffee, and that he would put his hands in his pockets when angry. At the annual party, she wasn't just rambling drunkenly. She was speaking the truth after drinking. For some reason, Yu Xinping changed his mind and forcefully approved a 3-day sick leave for Xia Xian, even though she repeatedly stated that her injury wasn't severe enough to warrant it. During her sick leave, Yu Xinping visited her once, bringing plenty of frozen dumplings, instant noodles, and sausages. She thought to herself that the CEO was truly ruthless, planning to ruin her health with junk food. Despite the intention to harm, lazy Xia Xian still ended up eating most of it. She knew Yu Xinping was displeased with her. Anyone would be unhappy after being embarrassed by her at the annual party. She had mentally prepared herself to be sidelined, but unexpectedly, half a month later, Yu Xinping promoted her. Senior secretary, double the salary, a private office, a company apartment, and a car. She wondered if he had lost his mind or if his meridians were flowing in reverse. Anyway, Xia Xian would never believe that Yu Xinping was so impressed by her work skills that he overlooked her antics at the annual party. Sure enough, his true intentions soon emerged. "Secretary Xia, you've been promoted. Shouldn't you treat everyone to a meal?" Yu Xinping suggested. Xia Xian looked at him warily. What kind of boss extorts a meal from his subordinate? What kind of boss deigns to freeload a meal? She didn't need to think twice to know he had ulterior motives. "CEO, last year I burned incense at the temple, praying for a promotion this year. Now that I've been promoted, I need to repay the favor at the temple. The treat will have to wait." Xia Xian thought she was being exceptionally clever. "I'm the one who promoted you, not the Buddha. Whether you believe it or not, I do. I've already bought the pig's head and plan to go this weekend." "In that case," Yu Xinping said slowly, glancing at her, "I'll accompany you. I've had some bad luck lately and want to dispel it." Was he implying she was the source of his bad luck? Nowadays, people rarely use pig heads to repay temple favors. Most buy incense or donate to the temple's maintenance fund. The wealthy might even donate a golden statue. Xia Xian wondered why she had to mention the pig's head. Heaven knows how terrifying it was to wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom and see a pig's head grinning back at her on the table. When Yu Xinping came to pick her up, he noticed the dark circles under her eyes. "What happened? Did you have a deep conversation with the Buddha last night?" "Yes, the Buddha visited me in a dream and said he was very pleased with the pig's head I chose for him." She pushed the pig's head towards Yu Xinping, almost touching his face. His expression changed drastically, and he stepped back several times. Peeking out from behind the pig's head, Xia Xian grinned. He also said, "I'll have exceptionally good luck this year." The pig's head smelled unpleasantly fatty and fishy. Yu Xinping's face turned red, looking like he was about to vomit. He grabbed a bottle of mineral water from the car and gulped down several mouthfuls, then glanced disdainfully at the pig's head. "Drive yourself there." Xia Xian gently stroked the pig's head, smiling sweetly. "My car is at the new apartment's parking lot. You can take me to get it." With a loud bang, Yu Xinping shut the car door. "Get a cab." He drove a meter away before reversing back, rolling down the window. "I'll meet you at the temple." It was as if he anticipated her tricks. Xia Xian had no choice but to hail a cab while holding the pig's head. Yu Xinping waited for over an hour. In truth, he could have dispelled his bad luck on his own while she repaid her temple favor. There was no need to do it together. The ritual went smoothly. Though the elderly monk reluctantly accepted the pig's head, he gently advised Xia Xian, No need to go to such trouble, just donate some incense money. Xia Xian placed a coin into the donation box. Yu Xinping, much more generous, after making his wish known. After praying to the Buddha, stuffed several large bills into the box. Sincerely, Xia Xian said, CEO, if you ever have any worries, you can always talk to me. I'll charge less than the Buddha. Yu Xinping gave her a sidelong glance. Can you ensure I have children soon? No. After returning home, Yu Xinping fell ill. The doctor attributed it to overwork and advised him to rest more, but Xia Xian suspected it was because he was scared by the pig's head. Her colleagues visited him in the hospital one after another, but Xia Xian was busy with moving and delayed her visit. By the time Yu Xinping was discharged, she hadn't visited him once. Fang Ziyu said, Xia Xian, you're really heartless. Determined to distance yourself from the CEO. Huh? You didn't even visit him in the hospital. I was busy moving. Even manager Shen from KD found time to visit the CEO. He's always busy, and you think moving is busier than him. Xia Xian was genuinely busy. She even took leave for the move. After living in her old apartment for 4 years, she had so much stuff that it took 3 large trucks to move everything. The new company-provided apartment was on the 17th floor, and hauling everything up there took most of the day. She spent her evenings organizing and cleaning, leaving no time for hospital visits. That's how she explained it to Yu Xinping, who, surprisingly, didn't blame her. Instead, he said kindly, moving is a good thing. Your colleagues haven't seen your new place yet. How about you treat everyone to a meal to celebrate your new home and your promotion? They haven't seen my old place either. Xia Xian knew the CEO had ulterior motives. He was still trying to get her to treat everyone to a meal. Colleagues outside heard their conversation and chimed in. Yeah, Secretary Xia, you haven't treated us to a meal since your promotion. My place isn't ready yet. Maybe next time. Yu Xinping interrupted. Then let's go to the hotel we usually take clients to. The manager there knows you and can give us a 25% discount. He was determined to mooch a meal off her. With all her colleagues looking on, refusing would make her seem stingy. So, in front of Yu Xinping, she called the hotel and booked a table. Yu Xinping smiled at her, making her feel uneasy. During the meal, Yu Xinping's true intentions became clear. He kept urging others to toast Xia Xian. Shaolin, Secretary Xia just got promoted. Shouldn't you toast her? Xiao Sun, aren't you going to toast Secretary Xia? Xiao Shen, Secretary Xia moved to a new home. Aren't you going to congratulate her? Xiao Li, I remember you're the best at drinking. On such a happy occasion, shouldn't you join Secretary Xia for a drink? Come on, let's all toast Secretary Xia, congratulating her on her promotion. Since the incident at the annual party, Xia Xian rarely drank. With her bizarre drunken behavior, she knew she shouldn't touch alcohol. She smiled weakly and protested. CEO, Before she could finish, Yu Xinping gave her a stern look. What, Secretary Xia, you're not even going to give me this face? He gently swirled his wine glass, the red liquid swirling. His gaze was always intimidating, especially during negotiations. He had taught Xia Xian that the biggest mistake in negotiations was a lack of confidence, avoiding eye contact with the opponent. No matter what your cards are, you must speak with a demeanor of superiority, always maintaining eye contact. Xia Xian tried to glare back at Yu Xinping, but as soon as her eyes met his, she quickly looked away. She bit her lip, picked up her wine glass, and fake smiled. All thanks to the CEO's promotion, I toast to the CEO. She took advantage of his distraction to pour the wine onto the wall behind her. Everyone else saw but remained silent as one by one they toasted her. Xia Xian managed to dump most of the wine. Her colleagues, understanding the situation, looked at her with both sympathy and admiration. When it was time to act drunk, she clung to a female secretary and dramatically confessed, "Did you know? I've liked you for a long time." The female secretary tried not to laugh, her mouth twitching as if she had a stroke. Worried she might burst out laughing, Xia Xian quickly pressed her head to her shoulder. "Good girl, I'll take care of you from now on." Yu Xinping, expressionless, watched her performance and slowly walked over, making Xia Xian feel a chill down her back. She whispered to the female secretary, "Quick, take me home." But the female secretary suddenly betrayed her, pushing her into Yu Xinping's arms. "CEO, you should take Secretary Xia home." Everyone exchanged meaningful glances and left, leaving the two of them alone. Xia Xian reached out towards the empty doorway, crying out, "Darling, come back. Don't leave me." Yu Xinping, embarrassed by her behavior, sternly said, "Don't make a scene," while dragging her to the car. Xia Xian pondered on when it would be appropriate to wake up from her drunken state. Yu Xinping drove quickly and smoothly, and before she could calculate the timing, they had already arrived at her home. She decided to keep her eyes closed and pretend to be completely inebriated. Yu Xinping carried her out of the car, into the elevator, and then found her keys in her bag to open the door. He carried her into the bedroom and laid her gently on the bed. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he sat by her bedside for a while. Xia Xian didn't dare open her eyes, but she could feel his gaze on her face. She thought, is the CEO contemplating whether or not to take advantage of me in my drunken state? She felt equally conflicted. If Yu Xinping couldn't resist and made a move, should she resist? In the midst of her turmoil, she heard Yu Xinping say, "Do you only dare to say you love me when you're drunk?" Xia Xian felt as if she'd been struck by lightning, almost unable to stop herself from jumping up from the bed. What does he mean by that? Does he know I love him? Her eyelids twitched for a long time, but she didn't dare open her eyes. Yu Xinping sighed, closed the door, and left. The next day at work, she tried her best to act normal. Her colleagues smiled teasingly. Did anything intense happen last night? Xia Xian rolled her eyes at them. No. Yu Xinping also acted as if nothing had happened. It was as if the words she heard last night were just an illusion. She began to doubt herself, thinking maybe she'd been longing for Yu Xinping for so long that she imagined hearing those words. She felt anxious for several days, often glancing through the large floor-to-ceiling window separating her office from the CEO's office. From her new office, which was now just separated by this large window, she constantly felt an overwhelming pressure. Several times, when she looked at Yu Xinping, he would look up at the same time. Their eyes would meet, and Yu Xinping would smile, a cold glint flashing on the lenses of his glasses he only wore while working. It was just like the villain in a cartoon plotting murder. Xia Xian broke into a cold sweat. She felt she needed to do something to prove she had no inappropriate thoughts about Yu Xinping. After thinking it over, she realized that apart from revealing her feelings at the annual party, she had left no other traces of her affection. Yu Xinping must be tricking her, right? He had done similar things before. On April Fool's Day, he had her running in circles. He claimed he was meeting a client in Italy and had forgotten an important document, asking her to bring it over. She actually bought a plane ticket and flew to Italy, only to find that Yu Xinping was nowhere to be found. To top it off, Yu Xinping refused to reimburse her for the plane ticket afterward. "You have to pay for your lack of intelligence," he told her. Xia Xian was so furious, she would have been blowing her mustache and glaring if she had a mustache. Xia Xian felt she needed to visit the temple again to pray to Guanyin. She specifically chose Guanin's birthday, which wasn't on a weekend, and wrote a leave request for Yu Xinping. Yu Xinping didn't approve it and said, "It's Thursday, my mother's birthday. She invited you to our house for dinner. Why should I go to your mother's birthday? Aren't you good at performing magic tricks?" So she was invited to entertain everyone. She blurted out, "Is there an appearance fee?" Yu Xinping gave her a meaningful look. "Yes." "Is it a lot?" Yu Xinping's eyes twitched slightly. "You won't be disappointed." Since there was a generous appearance fee, Xia Xian didn't hesitate. She put her visit to the temple on hold and went shopping for a full magician's outfit and learned a few high-level magic tricks online. She thought if she kept being so diligent, she'd soon be as good as Lu Qian. However, when she arrived at the Yu mansion on Thursday, no one mentioned anything about magic. Xia Xian expected a grand birthday party, but found it was just a simple family dinner, with only Yu Xinping and his parents present. What was the point of inviting her then? She was still wearing her black tailcoat, a top hat, and carrying a cane. If Yu Xinping hadn't firmly held her arm, she would have bolted. The dinner was incredibly dull. After the meal, Mrs. Yu chatted with her for a while and then took off her jade bracelet, insisting on giving it to Xia Xian as a meeting gift. Xia Xian refused multiple times until Mrs. Yu almost got angry, so she reluctantly accepted it, thinking, "Is this the appearance fee Yu Xinpin mentioned?" Later, the four of them watched a video together. As soon as the screen lit up, Xia Xian realized it was bad news. It was a video from last year's annual party. She couldn't understand the situation. Was this family conspiring to make her uncomfortable? Watching the video, Xia Xian realized that Yu Xinpin's parents had attended the annual party, meaning they saw her vomiting all over their son and shamelessly confessing her love to him. How embarrassing. Her face grew hot, and she hung her head lower and lower. Suddenly, she heard her drunken voice. "Yu Xinpin, did you know I've liked you for a long, long time? Here." She pointed to her heart. "It's full of you," about to explode. Xia Xian covered her forehead. "Be my boyfriend, date me?" Xia Xian covered her eyes. "Okay," she heard Yu Xinpin say on the screen. She turned her head to look at Yu Xinpin in surprise. Yu Xinpin's lips curved, and a mischievous glint flashed in his eyes. "Why are you so surprised about something you already know?" So that's how it was. She confessed to Yu Xinpin at the annual party, and Yu Xinpin agreed. After sobering up, she forgot and continued her secret crush. Yu Xinpin's parents always thought they were dating, hence her inclusion in the family dinner. Suddenly, everything that had puzzled her made sense. She wanted to laugh out loud. So Yu Xinpin liked her too. But her laughter quickly died down as the video reached the part where she was clinging to Yu Xinpin and vomiting. What a complete embarrassment. "Yu Xinpin, what's the deal with your grandfather's ring? I was afraid you'd forget about your confession after sobering up, so I used the ring as a reminder. But you had such peculiar thoughts and no courage, just kept avoiding. Yu Xinpin, did you always know I loved you?" "Yes. I thought I hid it well enough." "How did you know?" "There are 3 things in this world that become more obvious the more you try to hide them: poverty, a cough, and love.